welcome you all to this very special program that we're organizing today. This is done jointly by the MCCIA and the Pune International Center, the PIC. I think before I introduce you all, Dr. Sharma, who is our keynote speaker today, who is inaugurating or who is launching this series. Dr. Sharma, let me introduce you to the audience first, or let me introduce the audience to you. MCCIA has been here for the last 7 decades, and they have played a catalytic role in the economic development of not just Pune, but the region around. And not just the industrial and economic development, but they have also been very active in certain social elements around it through their organization called Genwani. That's MCCIA. About PIC, as I mentioned you, it's a think tank, and some of you could be new to PIC and coming here for the first time. Pune International Center is a think tank. It's a platform that allows discussions, debates, so that we are able to talk about the topics that are global, national, or local for that matter. Today, in the audience, we also have members of the chamber, members of the Pune International Center, and the Punekers who take a lot of interest in such topics who are here. Before I introduce you to the speaker, may I invite on stage Dr. Mashilkar, the chair of the program today. Please, sir. Dr. Sharma, please. And Satish Magar, the president of the chamber. As I mentioned, Dr. Mashilkar, the president of Pune International Center, will chair the session today. So we are very, very happy that you could take time out and put this on priority, because we're well aware of the punishing schedule that you had, so to say, in Delhi yesterday while we were there, and also you have one day after, where again you have some of the PIC activities on your agenda. So thank you for coming straight from the airport to do this program. Again, thank you to Mr. Magar as well, who doesn't need much of an introduction in Pune, and more so in this building, so I won't dare do that. Now moving on and introducing you to Dr. Sharma, Vice Chairman of Lupin Ltd. Dr. Sharma has had a successful career that spanned more than 4 decades, and where he held various senior management positions in operations, corporate development, executive management, and all of that in pharmaceutical as well as the chemical industry. He is a doyen of the industry, and that won't at all be an overstatement if I mention that. As MD of Lupin for close to a decade that ended in 2013, he has been responsible for shaping and inking Lupin's stupendous success. One of the architects of Lupin having achieved global market leadership. As you all know, he was at the helm of affairs when Lupin got transformed into one of the largest and fastest growing specialty pharmaceutical company globally. He was appointed the vice chairman in 2013. Dr. Sharma is a chemical engineer from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, a postgraduate diploma in industrial management from Jamnalal Bajaj in Mumbai, a PhD in economics from IIT Mumbai, and he also holds an advanced management degree from the Harvard Business School, Boston. Sir, we are blessed to have someone like you come here today and launch the session on Make in India. May I now request Dr. Mashilkar, the chairperson, to kindly address the gathering with his opening remarks. Sir.
Thank you, Prashant. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all on behalf of both PIC and MCCIA. And thank you very much, Dr. Sharma, for being here with us today and giving the very opening talk of this series on Make in India, series of lectures on Make in India that we have launched. I'd also like to begin by thanking Indigo Airlines, because in the morning I had to perform the duty of being a chief guest at the national launch of biofuel initiative of the Government of India. And I took the 2:45 flight, it left at 2:44 and landed in time. So things do happen in India, you know, ahead of time. I'd like to just say a couple of words about PIC, particularly for your benefit. Already Prashant has introduced you. This is, as we call, a Vichar Manthan Kendra. Right? All of us do that here in Pune. Pune has been a thought leader for a number of years. We produce variety of policy papers. We do a number of things, but I'll not go through everything. But policy papers are very important because you could quite clearly see where your talk is going to be fit in. And those are connected with issues that are of deep concern to the nation, to the city, to the state, and so on. Just to give an example, we had a policy paper on corporate governance. And when we do that, we just don't publish it. We get the key stakeholders involved in it. Like Virappa Moily was then the minister for corporate governance. He came, he released it. It was widely circulated. It found its place in the corporate boardrooms. Many of the suggestions that we had got sort of incorporated because we want to make a difference at the end of the day to the thinking. When the elections came, you know, we created a policy paper, Innovating India, Roadmap for 2014 and 15. We had discussions around the country, beginning with Delhi. We sent it to who is now the Prime Minister, then the Gujarat Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. He responded. We sent it to Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. She responded. You know, so it had influence sort of all around. Same thing we did in the Maharashtra elections. We created the Progressive Maharashtra report. It went widely to everyone, including the Chief Minister, leaders of various political parties. We had discussions here. We just had a working paper on smart city, which is going to be released. We look at the national scenario, the national initiative. Swachh Bharat is one of those initiatives. So we have created papers, sanitation for all, policy papers, sanitation for all, led by Mr. Dilip Padgaonkar, and we have on the 16th morning meeting with the cabinet minister, who is Minister for Rural Development, Panchayati Raj, Drinking Water and Sanitation, Mr. Virender Singh, where this will be presented to him. Because once again, there are so many new ideas, innovative ideas that are there in that policy paper, so that we want to create influence in terms of their thinking. And I can go on. But so in India, which really was the brainchild of Vijay, the idea again was this is a new initiative that our Prime Minister has launched, the nation has launched, and we want to put together a policy paper. So what is going to happen is, you are kicking off the first lecture. As a matter of fact, there will be people in the audience, who will be responsible for finally creating a policy paper. We have Satish Devdar and scholars from GIP here. He's from Ahmedabad. We just made him. So you begin, and then there are a number of other leaders who again, like Lupin, have done us proud by showing that yes, we can make in India. They will be speaking. So this is where it is going to be. So I thought I'll just give you the context, in terms of what we're doing. I'm not going to give a talk on Make in India because you obviously know what are the challenges. I think we have to quickly realize that 55% of India being less than 25, we tom-tom about it as a great competitive advantage, comparative advantage, demographic advantage. But it can become a demographic disaster if we don't do Make in India, we don't create jobs for them. So I think imperative that we do it. We have no option, as a matter of fact. We have to create 1 million jobs per year. Where are we? 2% is India's share of global markets, manufacturing. And look at China, it is close to 19%, 2% versus 19%. So we have a long, long way to go. When it comes to ease of doing business, we are 132 among 185. We have to rise and rise very rapidly. There are issues about difficult business environment, labor deployment, rigidity, infrastructure deficit, regulatory delays and lack of transparency, high cost and non-availability of commercial credit. But the important thing is that despite all this, some of you did it. How did you do it? We want to understand. You know, the pre-globalization era, you faced all sorts of difficulties. And I'm very proud that we are beginning this series with Lupin. Lupin has a special place in my heart, I must tell you. Deshbandhu Gupta, 1968, he created this. He was an academic, an associate professor, and he came, but a true visionary leader. I still remember my first meeting with him in late 70s, as a matter of fact. And I distinctly carry a memory of his talking about aspirations, you know, and he's saying, my actions have to match the aspirations of my people in Lupin, and for that I will do anything. And true leader, you know, I mean, really touched. And then your glorious journey, where today in specialty pharmaceuticals or generic drugs, you occupied such a fantastic position around the world. I mean, I remember your making the initial forays and then occupying top position in anti-tubercular drugs and all that journey. And particularly for me, what is fascinating is your commitment to research and innovation. And you have given me the privilege of inaugurating the research center. You remember in Pune, by the way, those of you, we know we always talk about other things in Pune, Sharma Vada, this, that, and the other. We have to talk about these innovation vadas. There are 1,400 people, by the way, working there, and it's a tremendous sort of a lot. So we are a much admired sort of company, and you and I have had a relationship for a long time. Their commitment to research is such. They work very closely with National Chemical Laboratory. You remember those days? Yeah, where we used to frustrate you by not delivering on time, but you still sort of went with us. So, all in all, I think that's a great occasion. I'd like to sort of welcome you on behalf of PIC, on behalf of MCCIA, and on my personal behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kamal K.
We'll now have presentation by Dr. Sharma, presentation and talk. May I request Mr. Magar and Dr. Mushilkar to please. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mashilkar, for a wonderful introduction and providing you the outline of what is expected. You know, in at such occasions, the topic, of course, is universally familiar, if one can say, Make in India. But apart from seeking out what in general at macro and micro level one would like to hear, I think this is an opportunity for a person like me to share my experiences, and as Dr. Mashilkar very appropriately said, that how despite all the constraints Lupin has been able to do it. And not only Lupin, there are many other good companies who have excelled despite all the constraints. So that's certainly a case, and therefore the way I'm going to share my mind with you is first to build a context, and I think while you are very familiar with the context, but it's good to recap and come on a common platform. And then I'm going to share the success story of Lupin as to how we've been able to transform from a very predominantly domestic company with a 350 or $400 million market cap. I'm just using dollars just to make it easy, otherwise one would have to go into lakhs and thousands of crores. So I'm just thinking, I'm not, just wanting to not complicate matters. From a $250 million, $350 million market cap way back in 2004, today we can proudly look at $12 billion market cap with a $2.2 billion revenue. So it has been some journey which has been very satisfying. And we've all enjoyed, me and my team have enjoyed contributing to this, and this is despite the constraints. So that's at the apex. And so to begin with, first... Okay. Decidedly, the Prime Minister's Make in India campaign signals a key objective of the present government's economic policy. In that, it means that you want to witness a rapid economic growth led by manufacturing. Traditionally, if we see most economies, be it advanced economies or even the emerging economies of Asia, earlier Japan, and in the recent times China and South Korea, have had their economic growth led by manufacturing. In India, last decade, we have witnessed our economic growth led by services sector. It's been fortunate, I think, that we have at least seen growth. But is it the right kind of growth is a question mark. And I think that's what the thought leaders are trying to ponder over and pushing for us to move into manufacturing-led growth as against service-led growth. And the reason for that is very simple. One, that is the manufacturing sector which creates more jobs than the service sector. If you look at, I'm not very good at statistics and don't enjoy dealing with statistics because that sometimes clouds the reality. But if you look at, just for the sake of making a meaning here, India's contribution of manufacturing to GDP is about 17%, and it creates about 13% jobs. Whereas 55% of GDP comes from services, and it creates only 32% of jobs. So there is this issue where you have more jobs possibility through manufacturing than through services. Very obviously, when you indulge in a lot of manufacturing, you create capital, and capital formation is a sustainable way of growing. And you know, we are all very familiar of the mid-80s and the late 80s story of the United States of America. We heard a flight of capital because they decided to go offshore for manufacturing. And the ills thereof, and now they're trying their best to bring back manufacturing onshore. And lastly, of course, when you try to finance imports for domestic demand through exports of services, it always creates a balance of payment issue. So you have, on one hand, the issues of employment, and as Dr. Mashalkar very rightly said, that we have just no choice. With the teeming millions, this demographic dividend could become a demographic damage or demographic Damocles sword on our heads, which will be very difficult to deal with. And therefore, I think we need to have employment created. We need to make sure that we have capital formation in the country, and we need to make sure that our balance of payment state remains in good shape. You know, recently I came across a report which has been published by McKinsey & Company, and they have said, commenting on the Prime Minister's Make in India campaign, that if this campaign is very appropriately directed and executed, it can create a manufacturing sector equivalent to about $1 trillion by 2025, which could be almost like 25 to 30% of India's GDP, and in turn would create about 90 million jobs. So very obviously, it's a very commendable objective that we are all pursuing, and despite all the concerns that we keep beating our chest about. Having said that, the question that looms large is that what is it that is happening? You know, which is the right things to do in order to be able to resolve this issue, to get across this this hurdle and get going? And because there is nothing in our country that we have tried to attempt and not succeeded. But why is it that we are living with the problem rather than over the problem? And with that in mind, I think let's look at some case studies, a few of them, just to build a perspective. So, as I said, we'll talk about a bit of a context to come on one platform, and then about the story of Lupin, and then we talk about how the scene today and what we expect. So on 7 July, Business World reported that India has displaced or replaced United States as the third largest steel producer in the world. Optically, a very interesting statement to look at, and all of us being Indians, it fills us with a lot of pride that we are number 3. But if you slice and dice the data a little bit, and you get to see the real story, what you get to see is that in fiscal 2015, we imported about 9.3 million tons of steel, which was 71% higher than 2014. A ban on iron ore mining has pushed the producers to cut down their productions. And so much so that in fiscal year 15, the production was 115 million tons as against 2018 million tons in 2010. So over time, instead of growing our manufacturing, we have reduced it. Not only that, if you look at the iron ore prices world over, they came down to $50 a ton, over $150 a ton from 2013. But in India, the iron ore prices dropped only by $10, that is 650 rupees a ton. So, on one hand, we have this remarkable feat of having displaced US as the third largest producer. On the other, we have all these issues where our production has gone down, our raw material costs have not gone down and commensurate with the international standards. Not only that, China produces 822 million tons of steel, you know, and our consumption, per capita consumption, only 60 kilos per person, as against world average of 216 kilos. So there is a huge demand for steel. We are definitely third now in the list, but we are ridden with lots of issues. Look at power. Again, we are the 4th largest power producer as far as installed capacity is concerned. But when we say 4th largest, we probably have 215, 220 gigawatts of power installation in India, as against 1200 gigawatts of power installation in China. But our per capita consumption is only about 700 kilowatt hour, whereas China's is almost 5 times that, 3500 kilowatt hour. And we are very familiar, I think we read quite often in the papers, the inefficiency of coal-based power plants with high ash content and producing higher CO2 gas for the greenhouse effect, and as well as the distribution losses. You know, I used to work for a group where we had a power company. The distribution losses would run on an average up to 30%. So again, inefficiency. So you saw how we are doing with steel, although we are number 3 in the world. We are number 4 in power. Look at cement. We are number 2 in the world. We produce 280 million tons of cement in India, just next to China. Of course, China produces 2,500 million tons of and the world requirement is 4,000 million tons. So it's more than 60% China produces. We produce 20 million tons. But our per capita consumption is 200 kilos per person, as against 1,500, 1,600 kilos per person for China. And this is an important piece of information, because generally the research has told us that the countries which have lower than $25,000 per capita GDP, they must have an average consumption of about 600 kilos per capita. Why? Because it is the mark of the development needed in the economy. Where India has 200 kilos consumption, US has 230 kilos. We compare very well, but that's a fully developed economy with everything exhausted on infrastructure, whereas we are wanting in every aspect. So these are some, and you can look at petrochemical. You can always keep questioning why our per barrel margins are around 2.4 to 5, whereas sometimes Reliance can get even 9 and 11, and what happens to high sulfur crude, and we can go on talking. The issue here is what levers to actuate to get out of this malice. We obviously, when we are number 3 or number 2 or number 4, I don't think we are bad. We understand the business, but we are just not. We have this huge inertia, which keeps us pulling back, or we say, oh, this is not going to be any better, let's continue with this. So, it was, in management, we often say, and I often use this with my team, that it's very important in life to be able to define what problems to solve. I think quite often we jump to conclusion without defining the problems. It was Einstein who once said that if I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I'll spend 59 minutes to define the problem and 1 minute to resolve it.